Good evening, I'm Pastor Paul Berthol, and I'm glad to be with you tonight for another study. As I'm bringing up the screen, let me first tell you that our study is going to be coming from the book of Ezekiel, verse 33. We're going to read verse 7. God was speaking to Ezekiel in Ezekiel 37, and he told Ezekiel that he chose him as a watchman over the people, and to go and to alert the people for him, to speak to them. And also, as a watchman, Ezekiel had some responsibilities and consequences. As a matter of fact, in verse 6 from the same chapter, chapter 33, it is clearly stated that if the sword come into the land and the watchman is not watching, he's not sounding the alarm, guess what? The blood of the people are going to be demanded from him. The blood of the people will be on his hand. If we want to compare this to today's church, we would take a watchman or shepherd as a pastor, because in the Old Testament they would mention that as a shepherd. A shepherd is someone who watches over the sheep. Just like you know that the shepherd per excellence, talking about Jesus Christ, is the shepherd of shepherds. So this means we all listen to him. He is the chief. He's our high priest. He's our Melchizedek. So here we see that right now Ezekiel was living at a time where the watchmen, they were not doing what they're supposed to do. If we read from Isaiah 56 verse 10 and 11, it reads as follows. His watchmen, talking about Israel watchmen, are blind. They are all ignorant. They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark. Sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. This was the message of the day at that time, because those who are supposed to be watching, the watchmen on the wall, they were not doing their job, and the people are not receiving the proper instruction. The people are not being fed spiritually, and everything. The devil was having he was having a good time. So, as we can understand here, Isaiah 57:1 tells it even better. It says, the righteous perish, and no man laid it to heart, and merciful men are taken away. So everything goes. It was like almost like some would say, whatever you feel like, whatever feels good, you do it. That's how it was. So to make matters worse, good was considered evil, and vice versa. Evil was considered good. So if we go to Isaiah 57 verse 1, it says, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. That's Isaiah 5 verse 20. So as we can see here, we're living in a time right now where the church is compromising. Where right now a lot of churches are signing for, or they marrying male couples and female couples, and I say that all the time, and I'm glad that these things are being recorded. The church has nothing, they do not assault gay couple. That's not the role of the church. You can look throughout the entire New Testament. There was not a time where the church was assaulting gay couples. As a matter of fact, if we go to the Old Testament, it's the other way around. So I'll go to two places pretty soon to show you that, on the contrary, they were the one attacking the people of God. They were the one assaulting them, and were ready to do battery on the people of God. First, we go to Genesis 15. But right before that, I just want to remind you that not only we cannot compromise spiritually, anything that has to do with your spiritual life, but also now there are a lot of compromises in the schools and everywhere, in all the public places. For instance, right now, the Bible is taken out of the schools. God's name is taken out of the school. But of course, everybody knows that Jesus made it plain and simple when he says that if an evil spirit is cast out of a man, that spirit is not just going to lie down and die. That spirit is going to go after 7 other spirits that are even more fierce than he is to go back. So this means those kids are not being instructed in the truth. They're not being taught the word of God. Of course, they're going to bring guns. There's going to be replacement, guns and knives, and start shooting. So it's the same thing. They replace creation with evolution. They replace the word of God with some type of fake science, because the Bible does not have anything against science. In fact, science is just reaffirming what God has created. That's all it is. Science is not a matter of faith. Science is just you have like some principles to go by. You have to go through certain steps and come up with a theory, and then to apply it as a law. Then it becomes a law. As a matter of fact, when you look at even evolution, it's still a theory. There was nowhere that it was never listed as a law. You know, so we can see that a lot of things are not the way they should be. So going back to show you that the Christian is not your enemy, it's like the same thing as those that are practicing witchcraft, or those that are into Freemasonry and everything else. They think that we out there to get them, to kill them, to ask God to throw fire over them. No, we're giving you the truth to help you love your soul. We are your best chance to come back to God. That's all we're asking. We're servants of the Most High, and we're doing His will. We know better than you are. What we're doing is like we know as watchmen. Jesus said our justice is supposed to go beyond or higher than the justice of the scribes and the Pharisees. So we have to sanctify ourselves. That doesn't mean we're better than other people. It's just that we keep our body sanctified. We keep our spirit sanctified in order to do God's bidding. That's all it is. So we're not out to catch you. We're out to help you to save your soul. Because Jesus said that what shall it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose your soul? So here we see that in Genesis 15, verses 5 and 8, Lot met two gentlemen who were outside. They were like strangers, and Lot invited them to come in to so they wouldn't be left out in the streets, because Lot knew the kind of environment he was. So soon afterward, those guys from Sodom and Gomorrah, they came and knocked at the door and asked Lot that to let those two guys out so they can know them. That's what it says in the Bible. Because whoever was writing at that time, they were not using the urban dictionary. They were not being vulgar. They said to know them, but you know, this means to know them as women. That's what it's talking about. So here, you know the end of the story. Those two guys were angels. So what happened? They blinded all those people, all the guys who wanted to rape them, who wanted to take them as women. In fact, Lot told those guys, look, I have two daughters who are virgin. Look, if you want to, I'll send those daughters to you, but please do not do that, because God forbids this. Don't do it. But they would not listen, so eventually the angels had to blind them. So that was like a violent assault, or violent, because they were ready to beat the door down and everything else if they were not blinded. Another time again in the book of Judges, the 19th chapter, you can start from verse 22nd, or you can read the whole chapter. There was a Levite whose concubine ran away, and he found himself going into the tribe of Benjamin to bring his concubine back home. Guess what? He fell upon the same guys again, who were trying to rape him. The old man who took him in, the old man was pleading with the guys and telling him, no, don't do that. Of course, they kept saying, we want you to bring the guy out so we may know them, so we may know him. So eventually, they negotiated with them, and they said they'll give them some women instead. It's here. It's in Judges 19. I'm not making it up. So eventually, the Levite agreed to send his concubine out to those guys. And the guys, they abused her throughout the night instead of the Levite. And of course, when the Levites woke up in the morning and tried to get the concubine, she was dead out of all the abuses throughout the night. So, of course, what he did, he took her dead body and cut it into 12 pieces and sent to the 12 tribes of Israel. And the other tribes decided that the tribe of Benjamin should release those guys to be judged and sentenced. They refused. So there a war ensued after a while. This means all the other tribes got together and almost wiped out the entire tribe of Benjamin. So after a while, all Israel were crying and said, Lord, why is it now that we're about to miss a tribe? Because they had already swore that they not giving any of the rest of the Benjamites their daughters in marriage. So eventually they had to go and steal women from other places in order to keep that tribe alive, because the other guys had already sworn in God's name that they're not giving their daughters in marriage to them. So look, the church is not your enemies. In fact, the church is trying to avoid judgment and is trying to avoid certain things. And I am amazed that most preachers would not even touch this subject when it's all over the Bible. When it's in Romans, the 1st chapter, it tells you clearly that God is against that, and he has his reason. Because if you study the Bible, whether the Old or the First or the New Testament, all those worship involve these kind of things. In fact, until now, every certain worship would end in these kind of orgies and things like that. It's those spirits. That's what they want. Unfortunately, a lot of our youth, they're not being taught, so they don't know. They think it's fine. They have all kind of teaching out there. They have the New Age, they have Freemasonry, they have everything there, and they like a snare, because we know that according to Thessalonians, during the last days, there is going to be a falling away. So of course, this is the beginning of the falling away. Now that they take the Bible away from our kids, now that men and women, they can marry whoever they want, they can change their sex, they can do whatever they want, everything goes. So of course, all of these things will have consequences. As you can see here, that's just the way that God put things. God has his reason. Because there is no way two women can procreate or two men. So here we are going to our next slide, where Jude only has one chapter, the 3rd verse, I believe, where Jude is saying we do have to contend for the faith. We have to contend for the truth. We have to be like apologists and stand with the truth. So in the churches there was that doctrine, the Nicolaitans, that you can see in Revelation 2 verse 6, where Jesus said to the church of Ephesus that I know that you hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. So of course, who was this guy? The word itself is coming out of a Greek word, Nikolaos, which is a combination of Nikos, which is to conquer, to subdue the people, and Leos, which is the second part of the word, which means a people. So this doctrine was there to conquer, to subdue the people. So this guy was compromising. He was compromising. This guy was really like into the occult. He would accept certain things as the people can eat meat sacrificed to idols. So he would try anything and everything. In fact, the guy was a proselyte. He was not born a Jew. He was a proselyte, and from a proselyte he became a Christian, and from a Christian he was testing whatever is out there. If they said here comes the Rosicrucians, so this guy is going to go and run after the Rosicrucians. If they said there is the New Age, let's go for it. If they tell him we have Freemason out there, he's going to run after. So Jesus was really against that, because he knows that once these things get into the church, it's never going to be the same again. So we only have one hope. When the church is getting to that level, and we'll see that in our next slide. Our hope is that, according to the Bible, there is always going to be a remnant who's going to stand no matter what. And this we can see here. I don't know if you can see that Nebuchadnezzar's statue, where you have everybody bowing down to him, to the statue, and those three guys would not. Those are like Daniel's companion, and they said, King, if you want to put us in the fire, if you want to put us in the furnace, it's fine with us. One thing we know, we're not bowing in front of that statue. And if the Lord chooses to deliver us out of your hand, it's fine. If He chooses not to deliver us out of your hand, but know for a truth that we're not bowing down. So this is what we have in these last days. We always going to have a remnant. As Paul was saying here in Romans 11, starting from the first through the 5th verse, you see here that God was telling Elijah, when Elijah stood alone, and Elijah now wanted to kill himself. He wanted to die. Not that he wanted to kill himself, but he was asking God to take him. Kill me. I can take it anymore. But God said, you're not alone. God said, I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have never bowed the knee to the image of Baal. We don't want to go into Baal right now. You can go and do research on Baal. That's one of those, really you don't want to go into this. Because they were even in eating babies and everything else. And these things are still happening. A lot of us, we know that. So what I'm saying here, we are not in a popularity contest. If you have to stand alone like Daniel's friends, you're going to have to stand alone, because whether you believe it or not, God is not kidding when He said to Ezekiel, if you do not sound the alarm, if you do not blow the trumpet, if you see the sword coming and you're supposed to be a watchman, you don't do your job, the blood of these people, or rather the blood of these sheep, will be on your hand. So we must take God seriously at His word. But always remember that God promised that there is always going to be a remnant. And that's why Paul can boldly say in verse 5 from Romans 11, it reads, even so, then at this present time, also there is a remnant according to the election of grace. So we have the elect. The elect are going to be standing no matter what. So that's why we read verses such as, if the devil could, he would have seduced even the elect, but he cannot. Because the elect, they're going to watch. They're not going to slumber. They're not going to be sleeping. They're going to watch, and they're going to be on their knees all the time. And they're going to go for the truth. And they're not going to compromise. Just like the three Hebrew young men. They're going to stand. And that's what's going to glorify God. So if you're one of the elect, do whatever you can to stand in these last days. Because the days will come when there is going to be where it's going to be on the apostasy. And we can see right now, everything is ready now for it. Because you go and ask some of the kids to give you 1 or 2 of the 10 commandments. And they're going to be looking at you like you're crazy. So we are here to exhort you. We love you. And whether those that are into witchcraft and all this other worship, whether they believe that we love them or not, at this point it doesn't matter, because we going to pray for them. We want their soul delivered, because Jesus plainly said, what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? And we're going to keep fighting for them. And even those who are into gay relationship, the real Christian, those who are doing God's bidding, they love you and they're not out to get you. I want you to know that. I want to leave you with that last verse from the 3rd verse of Romans 11, where Elijah said, Lord, they have killed thy prophets and digged down thine altars, and I am left alone, and they seek for my life. Remember, when you get to that point where you feel like that no one is listening, no one is after the truth, everybody is compromising, know that that's your time that God is going to speak to you like Elijah, to tell you that I still have people, I still have 7,000 who've never bowed down to Baal. May God bless you.